Welcome to The Artist Matters. I'm Alex Rudy, and each week you will meet incredible artists from all walks of life. Filmmakers, writers, actors, painters, musicians, and so many more, sharing their stories to motivate and inspire the creative in you. Whether you're doing it for fun or looking to make a living, this show will help you on your journey to bring out the artist within and letting the world know that your art matters. Hello, one and all. Welcome to The Artist Matters. I'm your host, Alex Rudy, and welcome to October. We are finally in the month of the O. And, my aim, hopefully, is to have every artist featured this month to have a Halloween theme to them. Since, of course, October 31st is Halloween, and in honor of that most spectacular, awesome holiday, I would like to interview people that have a Halloween theme or delve into the genre one way or another. Somehow, some way, they are connected to it and it fits in to Halloween. And that's exactly what I get today. So, my first guest is another Alex. We just had Alex Ferrari, and now we have Alex Dunning, living in Colorado right now, but he hailed from Minnesota. And Alex's specialty is special effects makeup. He has done that for Halloween, but his claim to it started as being a volunteer on a haunted ship attraction in Minnesota. It was on the ship, the William A Irvin. He goes into detail about who William A Irvin was and how he got to start off just going to the ship as a guest when he was young. And then he started volunteering for it, being a scare actor in it. Then he moved on to scenic design, so he learned that craft. And someone recommended, why don't you try some makeups? And then he got involved in that and was hooked. And created some great makeups for some of the people on the ship. And eventually he did a really good one of Pennywise, the clown from It. You got to check that out. He was running the haunt himself at one point in time with another person. And he explains a lot of what goes into the creation of it, how early they're planning for the next year's attraction, the theme, where they're going to have everybody pop out, how the flow is going to go. As so much I've always wanted to know about how a haunted attraction works and runs. And he goes into great detail and offers so much information. It is incredible. He even says there's a thing called a Haunters Convention, which is aimed at people who run haunted attractions all across the nation. And they get to see how other haunted attractions work and learn from them. They get to go into these haunted attractions just as a group where there's no other outside guests. So they get to be in there and experience everything firsthand and get some Q&A afterwards. Really incredible stuff. And of course, it's perfect for the most spooktacular time of the year, Halloween. It's got my creative juices pumping. I may have to go out there and start decorating my house right now. I can't wait. So, hey, let's get down to business and learn more about this creative artist named Alex Dunning. Welcome to the show, another Alex. We have Alex Dunning. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on, and hoping this will be the beginning of a bunch of Halloween-themed episodes with our guests who have their skills that fit the genre, and we'll get into yours. But first, where did your journey begin geographically?
Geographically, it began in Duluth, Minnesota, specifically on the William A Irvin Haunted Ship, which is a retired ore ship museum that we turn into a haunted attraction every year. And my last year there was 2017. Since after that year, they started doing construction on the slip, where it's resting, so they had to move it, and or 2018 maybe. But when that happened, it kind of lined up with me moving here as well, so it's kind of a end to a chapter there.
Going a bit farther back, as a young lad, did you always have this creative side to you?
Yeah, and it was originally with music. I picked up the violin when I was 7, and I played that for a solid 15 years. And then cello as well, picking that up around 15 or so. And that's actually the full-time instrument I'm with now is the cello. So I had music growing up. I always had kind of a mind for how things work technically. So I'd try to pick them apart and figure out how they worked. When I was little, I used to have this obsession with the engineering of how like roller coasters worked, and I always just wanted to create things constantly. And when the opportunity at the haunt came up, that just found a special spot in my heart, and that's where I found that I have a little bit of a dark side, but it's that's how you can express it in the healthiest way possible. But no, it was such a fun adventure picking up that haunt. It was totally different from anything I've done before, and I had a lot more kind of creative licensure with it. So that's where I really took off with it.
Well, going back to music, was anybody else in the family musically inclined?
My grandmother on my mom's side, she played the piano beautifully, absolutely beautifully, and my older sister, her name is Emily, she played the clarinet, but she didn't stick around with it very long. I'm the only one that really picked it up from the start and at a really young age and held on to it. So I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and I'm the only one that's had it stick with them. So I'd like to think there's more. There's some cousins on my mom's side. They're super musically inclined. Okay. They have bands. They perform in like Minneapolis and travel around. So it's kind of scattered in the family.
Was family encouraging of your musical talents?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Always had 100% support from every aspect of my family, from even distant cousins and relatives to my close family. They're all very encouraging as soon as I started to express my interest in music, and then they saw how much I was excelling with it.
Well, was it something you just did on the side, or was it something you did in school?
It was actually something I did in school, but when I first started, being in 3rd grade, they didn't have an orchestra available for elementary school kids, especially at that age. So I was actually self-taught for my first few years, but I already knew how to read music fluently. I had a music teacher starting in kindergarten who taught you the basics of it right from the get-go. So he definitely was a huge help for helping me open my mind to music and understand it better. And I just picked it up and got a couple books that kind of went over the basic skills of violin and just went with it and picked up really quickly. The first piece of music my mom bought me was The Devil Went Down to Georgia. And, yep. But nailed it.
Awesome. Wow. And how on earth does he make the transition from music to Halloween-themed stuff?
I think there's always going to be a gap in my mind as to where that connection falls into place. But with actually running the haunted attraction, I liked to utilize classical music in the soundtracks. Of course, I have like heavier metal and other genres that I use, but for like basic ambiance, classical music is the route that I like to go with because I can dig deep and find those cool hidden treasures that nobody really knows, and opens people's minds and be like, oh, what is that? Like, I've never heard that before. I'd be like, oh, it's Beethoven, da-da-da-da. I never would expect classical music like that just to be in a haunted attraction and to help make it scary. But just like in a movie, soundtrack is everything.
It's that extra piece that makes it, that elevates it. Were you always a fan of Halloween?
Yes. Yes, I was. I would have pretty creative Halloween costumes growing up.
Like?
Like I remember one particular when I was in elementary school, and it was like some kind of, I think I just called it a goon character, but I don't even know what it was. But I just had this makeup stuff at home that my older siblings had used in the past, and I just came up with something creative for my face and made a costume with it, and everyone was just impressed with what I came up with at that point. But I've never really had like a deterrence towards horror growing up, especially like back in the 90s. It was still different than now, where people weren't as sensitive or worrying about sheltering so much. But
at least he's not scarred for life, kids.
Oh, no. When I was growing up, if there was like a horror movie I was really interested in watching, my mom, she wasn't always like, no. She's kind of like, well, you're the one that has to sleep with it. Remember that. And that's fair. That's very fair. And I would just take the risk, and I would watch them, and never really had a problem. And that's probably what kind of started to desensitize me towards like monsters and gore and all of those good things. Like one of the first horror movies I remember seeing was Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which is a good one. It's a good classic. That one, I just thought it was really cool, the vampire aspect of it. I remember it freaked out my older sister, but I thought it was cool.
And then the William A. Irvin Haunted Ship. Did you go on it first as a guest?
Yep, I've been through it before, and I just got started with a friend. She happened to be acting on it that year in like 2006, 2007.
Okay.
And she's like, hey, want to come do this? And it's kind of how you get started in the haunt industry. You know somebody. And I went in, and I just loved it. Right from the start. Loved it. I was able to put my own personality aside, become someone else. And what's cool about it is you'll see people that you know, but they have no idea who you are because you're covered with makeup and all of that. And it's cool to play on their fears if you know them, because they just freak out. How do you know my name? Without like kind of noticing the obvious that it's their friend. But it was kind of a fun adrenaline rush. The first scare, the first time you make someone drop to the ground, you're hooked after that.
What did you dress up as? What was some of your characters?
When I first started, the theme at the Irvin was Hollywood, and they had different movie themes, classic movie themes, and then some more modern ones. And I started in an area that was themed to the movie Hostel, and that was intense. There were a lot of strobe lights. That was definitely a headache. That's where I learned I do not like strobe lights. I'll use them in my haunt, but I will not act with them. And it was such a gory scene. So when I was actually the killer role for my friend who was playing the victim. Yes. And innocent little Alex, who smiles and is nice all the time, became not so nice and friendly, and it was really fun. It's fun to put that aside sometimes. And I started with that role, and then at one point that year we had there was a room that was themed to the old adaptation of It. Just a little clown room, acted in there once, and then there was some kind of Egyptian-ish themed altar sacrifice room, and acted in there for a little bit. I really started to explore more the following years as I got a little bit more creative licensure and a little bit more freedom as the production management was getting to know me more and understand how I work, and that's always a big part, is developing that relationship. At one point, they let me design a couple rooms in the haunt, where I was able to act in there.
What did you use to design these rooms? What kind of is it wood? Is it a combination of crazy things?
Yeah. It's kind of like building a set on a stage for a play in a way. That year, it was in the forward cabins of the ship, kind of below the main deck, and so there was a lot of natural structure in there. But we did bring up wall panels and kind of covered up some areas, especially if they're at risk of being damaged because the ship is a museum. We would cover those up, make sure those are safe, and then we can paint the walls any way we want.